Tonight, what's the future for our high streets? Calls for a rethink as footfall in shops plummets by a fifth since before the COVID pandemic.
I'm in the centre of Edinburgh, where new tourist attractions are part of the solution.
And I'm in Glasgow, where cash incentives are to be handed out to encourage people back into the city centre.
Well, city centres suffer, local communities have boomed. Also making the headlines, we are stateside, looking at the Scottish businesses benefiting from better trade links with the US.
I'm here in New York City in a kilt-designing pop-up shop as we hear from Scottish businesses making their mark.
He's dead!
He's not dead, don't worry.
And science class with a difference, the festival looking to inspire curious minds of all ages. I'm Emma Cameron in Edinburgh.
And I'm John Mackay in Glasgow. This is the STV News at 6.
Good evening. If you've been wondering how Scotland's shops have been affected by the pandemic, well, now we have the answer, and it's not good. The number of people going through the doors last month is down 20% on 3 years ago.
Our biggest cities have been among the hardest hit, and the industry is calling for action to revitalise the high streets. In a moment, we'll hear from our senior reporter Gordon Cree in Edinburgh and Susan Ripple in Glasgow. But first, they've been looking at how shopping can survive.
The St James's Quarter is the glittering heart of retail in Edinburgh. Since it opened last summer, it's proved popular as a destination for shopping. It's on target for more than 18 million visits in its first year.
I like it so we can spend a day together rather than if you buy things online, it just comes in a second. It's not an experience.
I think it's more for the boys so the boys can experience it and see it like first hand sort of thing, see what they're buying.
What have you got today?
I've got this cool Mercedes set.
Oh, I've got that. That's a good one.
And then a Spider-Man Miles Morales.
I like it. I like to physically shop, that's true. More than via the internet.
But Sauchiehall Street in Glasgow is a shadow of its former self. A lack of choice is changing the whole shopping experience.
It's a little bit sad. You don't get as much variety, there's much choice, and it almost forces you online.
It's sad to walk by and see stuff that's closed, kind of brings the mood down a little bit.
The high rent prices with the lockdown and COVID being happening, it's like businesses just not being able to survive. Yeah.
Footfall across Scotland in March 2022 was down a fifth on March 2019.
The COVID pandemic has had a massive impact. At times, high streets were deserted for week after week.
Clearly, these are tough times for retail, with many traditional city centre stores either struggling or gone.
But the trends aren't the same everywhere, with plenty of shops in our local communities thriving. While shops are closing on Sauchiehall Street, just under 3 miles south, more are opening up in the bustling area of Strathbungo. One of the more recent additions is Flowers Vermilion, which opened in January. They used to have a shop in town, but new footfall would be higher here.
It's quite a dense residential area. A lot of people are working at home because of maybe the pandemic, and there's a real community vibe around here. I think people do like independent shops. People liked what we were offering. When people see us with the flowers, putting them together, they invest in that as much as the object itself. They invest in us and what we're doing.
Empty units vacated by the big chains are now a common sight in Edinburgh's Princes Street, but in Morningside, business is brisk. Here, a combination of highlighting products online, offering personal customer service and making coming to the shop more of an experience has seen the tills ringing.
The slice of shops that we have down here is incredible, Every unit, if one goes down, it's being refilled. It's a busy little part of Edinburgh, and we're so lucky to have the schools, the housing and all the kind of independent shops around here that just offers people such a nice quality of life, really.
For both the UK and Scottish governments, town and city centre regeneration is on the agenda.
There's lots of built environment and heritage and culture that can be brought into play. It just needs a bit of determination and focus, because our town centres are precious. They're really critical on so many levels. and they are due a wee bit more focus and attention.
But like so many who are feeling financial pressure, the retail industry needs things to change sooner rather than later.
Are winding down in the city centre in Glasgow tonight. Some shops are still open, others have closed for the night, and of course many didn't reopen at all after the pandemic. If you know this part of Glasgow, then you'll know that on the left hand side of me these units here have been empty for some time now. One of the things that retailers in the city centre have been struggling with recently is the fact that a lot of people haven't gone back to working in offices, so they're missing out on that business that they would get when people will pop into the shops on their lunch hour. They are doing things to try and improve the situation, though. In a few months' time, the Scotland Loves Local campaign will launch. That'll see vouchers worth £110 given to around 86,000 households in Glasgow. And crucially with these, you'll need to spend them in the shops, physically in the shops. And of course, another interesting thing about Glasgow is that it's actually the least densely populated city in Europe. And as you heard from the retailer in the piece there, he moved out to Strathbungle because of the residential area. They are planning to build more houses in the city centre, but of course that's going to take time, and who knows how many of these shops will still be open to see that.
Indeed, Susan. Many thanks for that. And Gordon, what's the future for Edinburgh city centre then?
Well, Emma, this used to be Fraser's. It was for decades a department store, the type of place that sold anything and everything and would bring people into town. But those days are in the past now. It's now the Johnny Walker experience. That's a tourist attraction, and crucially it's open later into the evening, and that is important because we know from towns across the country many of the centres are pretty dead after 6-7 o'clock. Now, we saw the St James's Quarter earlier. That's been a huge investment, a lot of retail custom there. But what it has meant is a lot of empty shops along this end of town. So now there's a lot of thought about what fills them. Could it be more tourist attractions? Could it be residential use? If that happens, maybe other things like health facilities. All of it about bringing more people into town. While retail symbolises the problem, it is not in and of itself the solution. Emma.
Gordon, many thanks for that.
Scottish trade with the United States could be set for a historic boost as the first ever trade envoy is appointed. They'll work on developing imports, exports, investment and business relationships beyond pre-pandemic levels.
It comes as the Culture Secretary continues a trip of North America to celebrate Tartan Week. Our reporter Laura Alderman is in New York City at the moment following these developments and sent us this report.
A wee dram being savoured thousands of miles away from the casks it came from. The United States is the most valuable export market for Scotch, and although profits aren't yet back to pre-pandemic levels, the suspension of costly tariffs last summer has already helped whisky bars like this one in New York City.
The tariffs were misguided, unfair, and I think if they'd lasted much longer it would have been a great threat to Scotch whisky. Yeah, I'm not worried about Scotch. I think the future for Scotch is very strong. The desire to learn about Scotch and to experience Scotch is only increasing in this market, and I think the runway is long and the future is bright.
Despite COVID and supply chain issues creating a challenging trading environment here, demand for Scottish whisky remains high, meaning there's plenty for Scottish businesses to toast to. Including the appointment of the Scottish Government's first US trade envoy.
Tartan Day, Tartan Week is a huge opportunity for us to build on the centuries of goodwill and connections that there have been between Scotland and both the United States and Canada. It's going from strength to strength, and I think we should be really excited about what it is and what it can be in the future.
And that's music to the ears of businesses like Anna's. Based in Edinburgh, their tartan textiles are so popular across the pond, they've just opened up their first shop in the States.
We've just grown that market. When we were locked in during COVID, we spent a lot of time doing research and finding out where those customers were, and realistically we think we could double the size of the business through trade in the US. Yeah, definitely some expansion on the cards.
Hopes are high this momentum could lift an historic ban on haggis exports, with Scotland's largest producer hungrily eyeing up the market.
By all accounts, we could have haggis
in the States for St Andrews this year. I am very hopeful because it's the most positive sign that I've had that we are at the final stage of this process, and if we get all our ducks lined up, it may just well happen.
With Scottish gins rumoured to be the next big thing to break America, business looks bright for Scotland's larder. And we're here in New York City on Tartan Week, of course, which is a great opportunity for Scottish businesses to showcase what they can do and make those crucial trade links with the US market. And one person that comes here very often is world-famous kilt designer Howie Nicholsby. Howie, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Laura.
You're very well known for designing kilts for celebrities, like you did Vin Diesel's leather kilt, and you've also kilted up Richard Branson. How valuable is the American market for you?
Well, it's huge and much more open-minded. They get the fact that the kilt's not just a heritage piece, it can be worn in a fashionable sense and as an alternative to trousers. It's also a very healthy garment for men.
And you're playing a really important role in tomorrow's tartan parade, aren't you? Tell me what's going on.
Well, I've got the honour of dressing Grand Marshal Karen Gillan. The last one was Billy Connolly in 2019. I've been involved in loving Tartan Week and its celebration of Scotland. We as Scots need to be prouder of being Scottish.
We'll bring all the highlights from that parade tomorrow as well. I've got a customer here as well who's getting a kilt fitted. Sir, can you tell me why you've got a kilt today?
Well, it's always been a dream of mine to have a kilt made by the master himself, and just proud of my heritage. There's a real pride in wearing a family tartan, and I've come to New York to be fitted again, and we've become friends over the years, our families.
Again, have you got more than one?
I do. This is my fourth.
That's more than a lot of Scottish people, actually. Well, I'll let you get back to it. Thank you so much for joining us on the STV News at 6. And tomorrow, of course, the week culminates in that Tartan Day parade where thousands of people will march down to the city streets here. And there'll be performances and live events. We'll bring you all of that, all the action here on STV News.
Laura Alderman in New York City. Back home, more than a third of cancers are being diagnosed by emergency departments in Scotland. Cancer Research UK says many people are having to wait until their health has deteriorated for their condition to be recognised.
There are now concerns it could be years before there's enough capacity in the system to ensure many more cases are picked up during a visit to the GP. Vanessa Kennedy reports.
Being a yoga teacher means Sarah was used to being flexible, until one day she found herself in so much pain she ended up in A&E.
One morning I was bending down to feed my cats and something snapped and I couldn't move, and I got taken to hospital because it was that bad. And what had happened was I had a sort of a liquid tumour around one of my vertebrae and it smashed my vertebra.
The 48-year-old from Falkirk actually had myeloma, a form of blood cancer. Her treatment is going well and she hopes to get back to work soon. While the nature of her condition makes it difficult to spot early, increasingly late diagnosis is becoming more common for other cancers. While we're all told that the earlier cancers diagnosed, the better, a study for Cancer Research UK showed that more than a third of people with the disease were only diagnosed after coming to A&E departments, like the one here at Forth Valley Royal.
What we know at the moment is that the capacity and the workforce in the NHS in Scotland for those cancer tests, those cancer diagnoses, have a lot of gaps in them. That's been there for a number of years, and until we address those, it's going to be difficult to reduce the number of emergency presentations that we're seeing.
And charities say the impact of late diagnosis on patients' daily lives can be huge.
Overall, around 60% of patients who have had a delayed diagnosis report a serious impact on their mobility. And then when your mobility is compromised, your quality of life is compromised, and that can also affect your well-being more generally.
The Scottish Government says while the NHS is still under big pressures from COVID, it's invested £20 million to help improve early detection of cancer. Vanessa Kennedy, STV News, Falkirk.
Other stories across Scotland, and almost 600 people fleeing Ukraine have been granted a visa to seek refuge in Scotland, according to the Home Office. The figure has more than doubled in the past week.
A man has been arrested and charged in connection with throwing a bottle during the Old Firm derby that injured a member of Celtic's backroom staff. The 32-year-old is due to appear at Glasgow Sheriff Court on Monday.
The number of COVID cases in Scotland has declined for the second week in a row. 1 in 13 people had the virus last week. That's down from 1 in 12 the week before. Scotland's first night out raising awareness of women's safety has taken place in Edinburgh. The event was a collaboration between charities and nightclubs and was organised after there were 9 times the number of drugging incidents reported in 2021 compared to 2019. Polly Bartlett was there.
A party with a purpose. This is Scotland's first club night that's purely focused on women's safety.
I've just been really apprehensive to come to clubs since the whole rise in spiking. Even thinking about what kind of clothes I can wear. It's just trying to get back into feeling safe and feeling like people around me are looking out for me and that the clubs are actually on our side.
It feels almost hostile to come out again, and it's just we've came out of this whole 2 and a bit years of we're entrapped in the house, we can't go out, and then we want to go out and it's not safe to go out again.
Well, there is a party atmosphere in here tonight, but there is a serious message behind this event, and that is that everyone attending here tonight still doesn't feel safe on a night out.
I remember even my first week of freshers is when I first got kind of assaulted in a club, and it was that's my first experience of being out at uni, and that's what it was.
The event was a collaboration between women's charities and Lulu's nightclub in Edinburgh. Measures like spiking lids and a safe room were in place.
Hopefully no one needs them, right? That's the goal of a night out. But if they do, they are there. And hopefully these safety measures work. And hopefully people enjoy them. And they can have a really safe night out. And that becomes the norm.
Another safety measure, Street Assist. Neil and his team of volunteers providing welfare support and first aid to partygoers throughout the night.
The scariest thing for us is that half of the females that we deal with are found alone, vulnerable, and sometimes all sorts of different conditions, So that in itself's a danger, and if we can, again, make that intervention to keep them safe, then that's what we're here for.
This is the first of many events, and those behind it hope other cities will follow suit.
I think there's been a real fracture between the women's movement and also the sort of clubbing atmosphere, and I think that both people feel quite affected by the other. So I think collaborating these two things is really important, and having a women's sponsored night in a club is really important because I think a lot of people have been looking for that.
The party continued long into the night, with these women taking steps on the dance floor and steps towards a safer future. Polly Bartlett, STV News, Edinburgh.
Around 200 people have demonstrated at the port of Cairnryan over the sacking of 800 staff by the ferry operator P&O. Unions are demanding changes to the law to ensure no other workers face the same situation. The company says it's preparing to restart sailings to Larne next week. Our political correspondent Ewan Petrie reports.
You're not sailing, P&O.
P&O has not been sailing since the middle of March, following the company's decision to sack 800 staff. 39 of them were based in Scotland.
Well, I know one local guy. He was a steward on board one of the P&O ferries, and he's totally gutted. It was the way it was done over with an email. There was no consultation with the trade unions, nothing. That was just, you're finished.
Nothing in, nothing out.
The move sparked outrage as P&O admitted it had broken the law. However, it said the action was necessary to keep the company afloat. It's replacing staff with agency workers.
We were here 2 years ago and demonstrating that was guys getting €5 an hour on these ships, and nothing's been done. That was 2 years ago, and it's still carrying on. And this to me is a small pebble that's going to get bigger and bigger.
The ferry that serves the Larne to Cairnryan route was detained by the Coast Guard for failures on crew familiarisation. The operator says it hopes to restart the service next week.
When these ships are actually running with passengers on them, we'll be back here to blockade the port, to ask freight hauliers and others not to use the scab vessels, the P&O vessels. That's the game we're in. Until we get legislation changed that ensures this can't happen again, we will be here again and again and again.
The UK government has said formal criminal and civil investigations are underway into the redundancies. Ewan Petrie, STV News.
Now, they may be 6 points clear at the top of the table, but Ange Postecoglou says any Celtic player who thinks the title race is over will play no part in the run-in. The Parkhead club are on a 26-match unbeaten run in the Premiership after their derby win over Rangers at the weekend. They welcome St Johnstone to Celtic Park tomorrow.
If subliminally they're feeling that way, they won't play on Saturday because they'll stand out in training. You know, like I said, I've got 24, 25 guys who are desperate to play, desperate to be involved, desperately wanting to contribute. So you can't roll up to this training and be thinking about anything else or thinking about any job done, irrespective of who you are.
Elsewhere this weekend, the battle to make the top 6 reaches its conclusion with 7 teams still in contention. This is how the table sits right now. Dundee United, Hibs and Motherwell occupy the 3 remaining spots, but only 4 points separate 4th from 10th. And these are the Premiership fixtures. This weekend, Aberdeen host Ross County, Celtic take on St Johnstone. There's Edinburgh and Dundee derbies on Saturday, Motherwell travelling to Livingston, and St Mirren welcome Rangers on Sunday at noon.
I'd rather be in this position than in a position where even if we win, we might not make it. And we're looking at other results. I think I'd rather be in our position. So we've got to sort of embrace that. But every game of football at this level is tough.
Certainly, we'll be trying to win the game. You have to be solid. You can't go cavalier against the better teams. First and foremost, we'll watch closely Saturday, see what the results are, and hopefully we've still got that incentive for the Rangers game, and if not, it'll be looking to try and claim 7th place.
Hampden Park has been confirmed as one of the venues which will form part of the UK and Ireland bid to host Euro 2028. The SFA and other home nations informed UEFA of their intentions to bid for the tournament. Russia and Turkey have also lodged official interest. Hampden was also one of the host stadia for last summer's Euros. And finally, Robert McIntyre looks set to make the cut at the Masters. The Scot is currently 2 over par through 16 holes, making him tied 34th. The top 50 in the field progress to the weekend to compete for that green jacket. Good luck to Bob. That's your sport.
Get your fill of the action. STV Sport, sponsored by Papa John's Pizza.
Sean has your weekend weather.
The outlook for the day is calm and settled. TUI Blue Hotels, sponsor STV Weather.
Well, we're back into that cooler northerly airflow now compared to earlier in the week when those temperatures reaching double figures, but back down to highs of 8 or 9 by day through the weekend. Not too bad, at least in the sunshine at this time of year. But tonight, a lot of dry weather, clear spells, any showers easing away from northern parts. Temperatures quite widely low enough for a touch of frost over inland areas. Lows down to about -3 parts of Lanarkshire and Ayrshire. Now, in that northerly airflow, the bulk of the showers will be a bit further north, but that does mean for the likes of us in Coll and Tiree, around Colonsay here, we're most likely still to catch a few showers into tomorrow. More exposed here, of course, to that northerly airflow. So 1 or 2 showers around here. Elsewhere, a lot of dry, fine and sunny weather. Any showers central and southern parts will be incredibly isolated, and you'll be extremely unlucky if you do get one here. So most of those showers, along with the strongest breeze across northwestern parts, so likes, as I said, of Coll and Tiree, Colonsay, across Mull. Jura and Isla potentially seeing 1 or 2 showers, but the bulk of them will be further northwest, where there will be some heavier ones, also pushing into the likes of northern parts of Argyll as well. But as we head into Stirlingshire, across Glasgow, Lanarkshire, Ayrshire, a lot of dry weather with sunshine. Temperatures 8 or 9, so if you've got a wee bench in the sunshine, a bit of shelter from the breeze, it won't feel too bad. Another fine and dry day for many of us on Sunday. Windier weather spreading into the west later on.
TUI Blue Hotels, sponsor STV Weather.
And finally tonight, this weekend, the Edinburgh Science Festival returns for the first time since before the pandemic. It's one of Europe's largest festivals with more than 270 events over the next 2 weeks.
Interactive exhibitions, talks and workshops will be taking place all over the city. Indigo Stafford has more.
science class isn't usually this fun.
Science is better than what you think. They have lots of fun things. Claw machines, a surgery. It was just fun.
It was quite revolting sometimes. Sometimes it was exciting.
He's dead.
He's not dead, don't worry. Taking place throughout the Easter holidays, the festival is aiming to inspire curious minds of all ages.
I think a lot of us came to the Science Festival through word of mouth, people who'd worked here before. So if people who've come in and enjoyed it, have felt that it's doing something worthwhile, have then talked to their friends, definitely something that we can be proud of in Edinburgh.
The festival is spread across 13 venues and more than half of its programme is free.
We have loads of things happening across the city and loads of different venues. It's a great way for the kids to get excited about science. And often, you know, the audiences and the kids that we've got coming don't even realise that, you know, we're teaching them science, and they're having loads of fun. And it's these fun and great memories that really help embed with young kids that science is fun and science is for them.
For the next 2 weeks, the Edinburgh Science Festival will be bringing people together, creating new experiences and sharing the joy of discovery. Indigo Stafford, STV News, Edinburgh.
These young scientists putting us all to shame. That's it from us for tonight.
Thank you all for watching. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next week. Good night.
Bye-bye.